Well, hello and welcome to episode number 450. Oh, yes, 450 of the Plane Talking UK podcast. I am Carlos, and in this week's show, one pilot steps in and saves the day. BA are on the hunt for pilots, and a 717 takes a mid-air leak. In the military news this week, Armando takes a look at Rivets, and it's the F-15s to the rescue. So joining me this week across the village here in rural Suffolk is, of course, the guy who runs everything in the Master Suite studio. It's Matt Smith.
Hello, yes, I'm back this week. Hello. Although I was here, wasn't I? But wasn't able to join you last week. But
no, you were busy. You were sorting things out.
Absolutely, yes. But I'm here now.
He's here now, so things will work perfectly. Although last week,
credit where credit's due. It was actually I was able to literally top and tail. I was quite impressed.
I know, I shocked myself.
Yeah, indeed. One thing we never have to worry about when it comes to this sort of thing, though, and he's always punctual, always on time, and his audio is always A1.
And his shirt's always crisp.
And his shirt is always nicely crisp, despite my best efforts, because I get Carlos to iron my shirts. Hello, Nev.
Yes, well, here we are. An interesting day today, lots of driving around Buckinghamshire, Berkshire, Hampshire, and then I'll just show you my little bit of tooth that came out today.
No.
Emergency dental appointment at 12:30, not 2:30, as some people might say.
I see what you did there.
But so we could have done without that, really. But no, for £23.80, I would like to thank the NHS for fixing my tooth for me. So
you're very lucky you have access to one, Nev, because I have to say there's a bit of a problem in this part of the world.
A busy week. No flying this week. Just lots of driving and a lot of faffing about. A bit more than I would have liked, but nonetheless, I'm here to tell the tale once again.
Well, pop it under your pillow, Nev. You might get a few quid.
Right, okay.
I might do that.
Indeed.
Or an aircraft part, you know.
Well,
that'd be nice.
Could be
a tag at least, surely.
Well,
we'll see. We'll see what the tooth fairy can do. Yeah. We'll see what the tooth fairy can do.
Right.
And we're missing a member of the team this week. Armando is unfortunately not with us this week, although he may be watching. Well, not watching while driving. Let me get this right. He might be listening while driving, unless his lovely wife is driving, in which case he will be watching. But he has sent us some videos in this week for the military news, so don't panic, Jonathan Warner. There will be some military news this week, and Armando will be doing it properly. So don't panic. And
he's on tape, isn't he, basically?
He's on tape, yeah. But we have got a fantastic guest joining us this week.
A
super sub. And it's safe to say that if you want something flown somewhere and you can't find anyone, maybe you can hire John Jester, flying the Queen of the Skies. So welcome onto the show, John.
Goedenavond allemaal from New Amsterdam, aka New York City, where I'm sitting patiently waiting for my trip to start tomorrow.
Oh dear. How long have you been there, John?
Arrived last night late. I had a conference. I was in Baltimore that we affectionately call Fight Club because I can't talk about it.
Okay, right.
But it's a safety conference that the aviation industry does here in the U.S. and invites participants from around the world to come into as well. But unfortunately, I literally can't talk about it. And drove up yesterday.
I love that. I love that because it makes it sound like you're a spy, John. I love that. It's just.
Safety is generally the anti-spy network.
Oh, right.
There are certain things that we do with safety that we keep. We like to keep the things
fair enough,
close to the vest. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah, definitely.
So you've left your Queen of the Skies park somewhere, John?
I'm waiting for her to show up here at JFK tomorrow morning, and I'll be off to Anchorage with I think 8 people, which is not nice.
Oh.
It's too many people on the plane.
Too many people, yes, quite.
Too many people.
Yeah, for a cargo pilot, that's too many people, yes.
Have you got enough seats? Is there enough seats?
Yes, there actually is. We have, on a 400, we have 4 seats. and Dash 8 will have 6 seats in the back, and then there's 4 seats in the cockpit.
Oh wow!
Oh, okay.
I'd want a cockpit seat. I think that's you want the views, don't you? If you
the view is a tad bit better.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Now, while we're talking about amazing things, by the way, I bumped into someone today, Carlos.
Oh, did it hurt?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I bumped into somebody because I was actually in town. Yes, I can see you laughing. Yeah, ha ha ha. I was out doing a little recording for the other thing that I do outside of this, and I bumped into somebody who was telling me that somebody who lives just up the road from us is a big fan and is always listening.
Yes, I did hear a whisper about a certain young member of our aviation PTUK family who lives, as Matt said, not far from us here in Bungay. So hopefully he's watching the show tonight. So if you are, Oscar, hello Oscar, one of our youngest viewers of the show. There's a picture of him there.
He's 10 years old, bless him.
He's getting ready, Matt. He's getting ready there.
And Mum and Dad are absolutely terrified because he's absolutely aviation obsessed. And you know what that means, don't you?
Yes, it means that Mummy and Daddy are going to have to do lots and lots and lots and lots of work.
Yes,
and earn lots and lots and lots of money.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So yes, in a perfect world, what we need to do is send our Oscar off with John, don't we? So we can go and experience the old 747, bless it, while it's still kicking around. But yes, thanks for being a loyal listener, Oscar. It really is appreciated. We've actually that picture was taken at the Norwich Aviation Museum, and we do actually have a meetup planned at the Norwich Aviation Museum very, very soon. So I'll make sure I send the dates across to Mum and Dad, and then perhaps you can come along and come and see us, because it's Wheels and something or other, isn't it? What was it called?
Wings and
Wheels. I don't know.
Wheels and things.
Wheels and things. Absolutely. Wheels and
stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Loud noisy engines and Vulcans and all that sort of thing.
Oh, I know. It's going to be a good day out. So yeah, thanks for watching, Oscar. Hope you enjoy the show. He's going to try and tune in, I expect, as long as he can this evening.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as Mummy and Daddy lets him.
Yeah, I don't know what time bedtime is, but we better crack on, I guess.
Mine's now. Good night, everyone.
Oh, right. Very good.
Going to say a big hello to everyone who's joined us in the live YouTube chat room this evening. Everyone's in there as always. Early risers today. Lee Davies, hello to you, Lee. He's obviously getting his beer ready. We've got Hobby Time. Hello, Hobby Time. Nick Codling, our newest member of the team, who's done a lot of work this week for our show notes. Hello to you, Nick. Mazoos, hello to you as well, one of our local listeners as well. Aaron P, hello. Dirk S is in there. Bill, hello, Bill. Richard Adams, good to see you in there, Richard. Graham Haley is in there as well. Good to see you, Graham. Logan Lynch, he's in North Dakota, watching tonight. Our main man, Micah, with the Blue Spanner of Doom, he's joined us in there as well. Good evening, I should say, to you, Micah. Well, mind you, it is good afternoon where Micah is. Stuart is also in there. Stuart McCutcheon, hello to you as well. Thanks for joining us in the YouTube chat room. And thanks to everyone who's joined us in the YouTube chat room this evening. Good to see you all in there. Don't forget, if you listen to the show as a audio podcast and you want to see just how crisp Nev's shirts really are, you need to take yourselves over to youtube.com /Plain Talking UK, and you'll find us on there. And don't forget to click the subscribe and hit the bell icon as well to be notified when Matt's hitting the go live button in the studio on a Friday night, because we'd love to have you in our community chat room.
Absolutely, yes. And of course, a very good evening to Oscar as well.
Yes, and Oscar. Yeah. So we've got loads of news to get through tonight, and obviously our Caption This, which this week sparked quite a fair amount of interest on the social medias. And we've got a very special story as well this week in the commercial news about, which is actually the first story, which is going to be about a place where Nev knows very well. So if everyone is ready, let's do some commercials.
I think so. Yeah, I'll press a button and see what happens, shall we?
Press a button. Press it back. Press it.
Hey!
Please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts.
Well, yes, it's this story is from the Chronicle.gi, which means only one thing. It's all about Gibraltar Airport, and the tunnel under the runway has finally opened today, would you believe? These are words I'd never thought I'd ever be saying. But the tunnel itself will be open to all vehicular traffic today, over 14 years since the project commenced, and marking the first new entry route into Gibraltar since the runway was built during World War II. As from today, the tunnel will be the only regular access point for all cars and motorcycles, including commercial vehicles, to and from the frontier with Spain and Gibraltar International Airport. Only pedestrians, cyclists, scooter and e-scooter riders and mobility scooter users will be allowed to cross the runway from that date. So all vehicles, including cars, motorcycles, vans and trucks, must use the tunnel via Devil's Tower Road and the East Gate roundabout. The tunnel will open at 1 minute past midnight, which it has in the early hours of Friday morning. Built to British standards, the new airport tunnel provides a 2-lane road in each direction, accessible via Devil's Tower Road, with a separate subway to provide a safe route for pedestrians, cyclists and e-scooter riders to travel through the tunnel, should they so wish, via a footbridge which is accessible from the eastern beach. This project, as I said earlier, has taken 14 years to complete, with contractors on site for a total of 9 years and work suspended for a period of 5 years due to litigation proceedings. The original contract was signed in November 2008 by the then Chief Minister, Sir Peter Karuna. Prior to the tunnel opening, Winston Churchill Avenue is the only road linking Gibraltar to neighbouring Spain. The Chief Minister, Fabian Picardo, says that I'm delighted that this long overdue critical piece of Gibraltar's infrastructure will finally be operational this week, over 14 years after the original contract was signed. The long gestation of this project has arisen from litigation and disputes where the Gibraltar government would not accept substandard work not in keeping with British standards. But it was right, we should not pay taxpayers money for work not in keeping with those contractually agreed standards. The government's insistence that the tunnel be completed to the highest British standards, as it was originally contracted to be, means that the final product is fitted with tried and tested safety features that ensure it's fit for Gibraltar's unique requirements. For the first time since 1941, the tunnel will enable free flow of vehicles and pedestrians across Gibraltar and will put an end to traffic gridlock caused by the closure of the runway to allow flights to land and take off at the busy Gibraltar International Airport. It's not that busy, actually, I have to say, but the tunnel infrastructure includes significant changes to the way vehicles and pedestrians move around Devil's Tower Road and the area of the frontier. So Mr. Picardo says, please exercise caution over the first few weeks, drive carefully and pay close attention to the new road signs and instructions. I'm also very pleased that the government has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Defence that will allow pedestrians to continue to cross the runway. This is environmentally significant and positive. Again, the system for pedestrians to cross the runway will also be different from what we are used to, so please pay attention to the new signs and instructions. The runway itself, of course, was built across it in 1941 and incorporated vehicular and pedestrian routes to and from the frontier. In recent years, the road was closed for up to 15 times per day to allow flights to take off and land. And the new tunnel, for the first time since 1941, enables the uninterrupted flow of traffic from one side of the runway to the other, and according to the Gibraltar government, will significantly improve traffic flow across Gibraltar itself. Story goes on somewhat, but in general terms, it's a huge improvement. And when I was there doing the interview with Trevor Hammond, who's general manager of NATS for the area, we were sort of estimating how long this was going to take, and we didn't really know, but finally it's happened. So it's very good news indeed. But you can still cross the runway if you wish on foot as well. So you can still take those pictures of you being in the middle of the runway.
So forgive my naivety here, but I mean, presumably, is that what all the traffic lights and everything were all about? To essentially to stop traffic when the runway was in use, if you see what I mean.
I mean, there's only probably 5 or 6 commercial flights a day to and from Gibraltar. Then there's the RAF flights from Bryce Norton, and there's some private flights, some BizJet flights as well, and some helicopter services and that kind of thing. But the congestion that it was causing on both sides of the runway were just horrific, because obviously they've got to shut the whole thing well in advance of an aircraft landing. Of course, with the propensity for missed approaches at Gibraltar because of the weather and the whole topography of the place, if you ended up doing a go around, then of course the traffic was going to stay put for another 15 minutes. So yeah, it was really challenging, but let's see what happens. So I probably need to do another trip back there just to check it out, make sure it has been built to British standards.
Well, of course, absolutely.
As they keep saying in their article.
Very important, I think, Nev. Standards must be maintained, I say.
Well, quite.
Have you ever flown into Gibraltar, John?
No, closest I've been down there was my summer vacation last year, and you could see the Rock, but that was it. It was sort of a wish, but not to be allowed with the family.
Yeah, you'd probably struggle, I think, when you have to get the 7.4 in there.
Well, I think you could get the 7.4 in, but you couldn't get it out again, probably.
You can get the 7.4 in at Norwich. It's like...
You could get it off the runway. I think you can always get it in and get it out. The plane actually light. We land on a 6,000 foot runway.
Well, Gibraltar is just on 6,000 feet, John.
We go to an air park that's actually in one of the stories today, Pinal, down in Arizona, and it's 6,000 feet. We have to be tugged onto the runway and tugged off the runway. It's such a small airport. We use it for maintenance only. It's not a regular operation, but it can be done.
Positive landing required. No floating it down the runway.
No
Cessna 172 in it. No. Next story comes to us from NBC News, and actually saw this one on this week. Actually, I saw this on the news feeds. It's a pilot from another airline helps land Southwest flight after captain falls ill. It's always one of those calls I've always wanted to get when I've been a passenger on board an aircraft, but it's not happened yet. But anyway,
I don't think your Cessna license will quite cover it, Carlos, to be honest.
Well, but I fly a 737 here at home. You know, it's virtually the same.
Again, not sure that's the same.
Anyway, passengers on a Southwest flight 6013, which was headed from Las Vegas to Columbus, Ohio, said they were very thankful another pilot was on board. A pilot from another airline helped land the Southwest Airlines flight that left early on Wednesday from Las Vegas after its captain became incapacitated and required medical attention, according to the airline and radio traffic data, in an episode that surprised some passengers who had no clue a pilot had fallen ill. Southwest Flight 6013 had taken off just after 6:30 a.m. bound for Columbus, Ohio, according to the flight tracking site FlightAware. While it was airborne, one of its pilots needed medical attention, a spokesperson for the airline said, without giving details about the specific health issue the pilot had suffered. In a radio traffic archived by the website Live ATC, a person says the captain had started to feel stomach pains and then fainted or became incapacitated around 5 minutes later. The person says the captain came back around 60 seconds later and was being looked after in the rear of the aircraft. And they also said on the radio that we needed to get him on the ambulance immediately. Las Vegas resident Diane McGlinchey, who was on the flight with her husband, said on Thursday that she didn't notice any panic when crew members initially went on the plane's public announce system to ask whether medical personnel were on board. A passenger sitting up the front who said she was a nurse put her call light to help and said she and her husband had been at the back of the plane and didn't notice it was a pilot who needed help, but she said they knew the ill person was with the nurse in her row being treated. The crew calmly just gave us an update saying we were going back to Las Vegas and we have a medical emergency on board, McGlinchey said. Meanwhile, the credentialed pilot from another airline who was on board as a passenger entered the flight deck with assisted and assisted with the radio communications as the second Southwest, or the second officer of the Southwest pilot, flew the aircraft for the airline. He said, "We greatly appreciated their support and assistance," the spokesperson said of the pilot who stepped in. According to FlightAware, the plane returned to Las Vegas Harry Reid International Airport around 7:50 a.m. The Southwest spokesperson said the plane landed safely and an alternative crew took over operating the flight to Columbus. They said, "We commend the crew for their professionalism and appreciate the customer's patience and understanding regarding the situation." McGlinchey said she and her husband didn't realise it was a pilot who'd had the medical emergency after the plane landed, and EMS and fire officials were already waiting. And that's when the pilot did come on and say they were taking the captain off the aircraft, she said. The other pilot from the other plane happened to also be in his uniform, she added, and no one seemed anxious or worried when the flight turned round back to Las Vegas. They were very thankful, she said, that he was there, McGlinchey said of the pilot who intervened. "I'm positive that the first officer would have been able to land smoothly, but it definitely made it easier for sure to have someone there to do the radio parts of the landing while on the aircraft, so it went very smoothly." Ross Amer, the CEO of Aero Consulting Experts in California and a retired United Airlines pilot, said the commercial airline pilots undergo medical checkups every 6 months, and such health scares are rare. With 2 pilots on every flight, the captain and the first officer are equally qualified, as we all know who watch the show, and trained to operate the plane by themselves if the other becomes incapacitated, he said. That, by a chance, a third pilot was on board was the icing on the cake, he said. Southwest declined to comment further about the incident, but said in a statement that all of its pilots are trained to fly as single pilots for situations such as this, and our pilot exhibited exceptional airmanship whilst in control of the aircraft. Well, we all know, don't we? We've seen this before. This is not the first time this has happened, and we all know that the first officer is as capable as landing the aircraft as the captain. But what are your thoughts, John, being our resident commercial pilot here on the show this evening?
Yeah, I think you covered it real clearly there, that the having that extra pilot on board to come up and take over radio duties, it's just a huge help. It just takes one less little bit of thought and allows for some coordination, and lets the first officer really focus on his task of flying the aircraft, performing performance numbers, probably doing some communications with the company to facilitate the landing. And if you listen to the audio of this, they elected to land and stop on the runway because the ground steering on 737 is only on the left-hand side through the tiller, and if the captain's the one that fell ill, the stand-in pilot is on the left side, and you're not going to swap, and it's going to be much faster to just stop the aircraft, get medical assistance there, and then let the plane be tugged off. And that's certainly the safest. There's no reason to push it any further. Air traffic can deal with a delay to ensure that this captain got the medical attention he needed as quick as possible, and I think that they acted exceptionally well. Basics of CRM apply to all airlines, all different operators, and usually you can kind of fit in fairly well. The individual procedures are slightly different, but the basics are the basics.
So I suppose for you guys with the cargo outfits, you generally tend to fly with more than 2 pilots on the flights that you do, John?
It really depends upon the length of flights. We tend to opt towards 3. Most of our flights are on the short end, 6.5 to 8 hours. Long end can be in excess of 17. So it scales up to 8 hours. Can be just 2 pilots. Occasionally we will do that. Occasionally we'll do crossings of the ocean and with just 2. We try not to do that. Oftentimes what drives it is the rest requirements that exist because we've flown so much in the preceding days. Will necessitate that third person, even if we don't have a direct hour requirement for that individual day. And it's always safer to have them on there. A lot of times we are actually just transporting other pilots from our company to get to another flight as well in the back of the aircraft on the 747 especially.
Now, Nev, you've obviously flown the A320 sim, didn't you? And I think you successfully landed as well, didn't you? So would you be popping your hand up if the question was asked?
Well, let's just yes, I did land it, single engine as well. But let's just be clear here. I was in the right-hand seat and I had a fully qualified fella in the left-hand seat who was doing throttles, radio, gear, flaps, and all the rest of it. So, I didn't have that much to do. I was just thinking, John, about taxiing off the runway with the tiller only on the captain's side. I wonder why Boeing have done that, and many other manufacturers have only got the tiller on the captain's side. What would you think that is?
It could be a cost thing for one, or it could be just the nature of the fact that the aircraft was designed, long ago when the captains reigned supreme. The captains were responsible for everything. You look at the newer aircraft, 777s, a lot of the Airbuses, I believe, have the tiller on both sides. 747 has a tiller on both sides, and our company was actually discussing going to a captain-only taxi procedure, and we had huge pushback from everybody saying, no, bad idea, really bad idea, don't do it. Because jumping into a large aircraft and suddenly taxiing it for the first time it's not an easy thing. And 747s, despite their size, are a bit skittish on the ground, especially when they're light, and you need some experience, and it's best to have that with somebody there with you. So in this case, the 737 just has on the left, and it's certainly a better choice to, just go with that process and not try and shake things up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What is it that? So this guy's put his hand up and said, I mean, did he have his flying surely, in order for him to have been accepted and taken seriously, he must have had some form of flying ID on him, or like like a copy of his license. I mean, do you carry your license with you?
Always carry my license with me.
Okay.
I believe in the story it said he had his uniform on, and I believe the gentleman was from NetJets.
Right.
NetJets pilots are oftentimes riding in the back aircraft, and they're either immediately going to go fly or have just completed flying, so they even have gotten a chance to get out of the uniform, or they need to be on their game to be able to show up and ready to go. And then they have IDs, and all the flight attendants on passenger flights are trained to look for able-bodied persons. And in this case, a pilot is a great able-bodied person to replace a pilot.
Well,
it's also the same for evacuations. They're looking for people that can assist them. And we carry our stuff. We'd show credentials, and I think that it'd be pretty obvious. And a quick assessment by the first officer. This is volunteer. It's going to say yes, no, this is going to work or not.
So I mean, and again, this is my naivety, so I apologise for this, but I guess the reality is that if his only role, if you like, would be to assist, if you like, the first officer who's now sort of by default been promoted, I guess, to the sort of like captain, albeit in the wrong seat. I mean, presumably. It would just be a case of getting on the ground and then worry about how you move the aircraft off after that, I guess.
Absolutely. And when you listen to the radio conversations, the communication was exceptionally clear to the tower that they were going to stop. It was not a question. They were going to be stopping on there and get the tug off after the captain was taken care of. And if, like Michael was saying, if they both ate the fish, and it happened to be both pilots, technically who gets in charge is the lead flight attendant. And, maybe lead flight attendant's not going to fly, but this replacement pilot certainly would have the capability of getting up there, getting a little bit of assistance, getting the autopilot to land the aircraft, or manually landing the aircraft in some form or fashion. It's not going to necessarily be the best landing ever, but, anybody can pretty much get walked through getting it on the ground for the most part. And most modern aircraft, and including the new 737s, have the auto land capability. So,
and in this scenario, presumably they are their like his duties essentially almost were to, because it doesn't matter what the aircraft is, the radio calls, I guess, are going to be virtually the same, aren't they, to the tower and such like.
100% the same. Worst case is hardest thing is to say the right call sign.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's quite. Yeah, absolutely.
That's about it. And he probably was also helping out with the checklist, reading a checklist. Yeah. We keep a card, excuse me. We keep a card in there for the checklist items, and that helps drive your rhythm that you have that. And I'm sure that they spent a quick moment there going through what was needed from the assistants from the pilot, and discussed that requirements, gave a briefing to one another about what they knew, what they felt capable of, and established a rapport.
Yeah, no, very, very cool. Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you, John.
So, Matt, you've got.
Yes.
If you're all right, are you all right to the next?
Yeah. I'm going to give it a go. We may have to abort.
Matt's got the next story, and it's about one of those things that I always seem to want to do as soon as I get airborne.
Yeah, indeed. Let's. I see what you did there. Yes, absolutely. It's from simpleflying.com, and the headline is Delta Airlines Boeing 717 leaks fuel soon after taking off. A Boeing 717-200, operated by Delta Airlines en route from Charlotte to Detroit, had to return to Charlotte shortly after departure due to a fuel leak last week. The incident was caught on video and posted to social media, which it has now had more than 40,000 views. The aircraft was airborne for about 10 minutes before it landed and underwent inspection. Delta said the affected passengers were rebooked on their flights. The N925AT is a 22-year-old 717-200. The aircraft was operating Delta Airlines Flight 2481, DL2481, from Charlotte Douglas International Airport to Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport on Tuesday the 14th of March. According to the Aviation Herald, the plane had departed from runway 36C when air traffic controllers observed a fuel loss from the aircraft. During its climb, massive amounts of fuel were released from the right wing at 4,000 feet. Pilots reportedly stopped the climb and circled the plane round to return to Charlotte on runway 36 left. Air traffic control also cancelled all other approach clearances to runway 36 left as a precaution. The 717 landed safely about 10 minutes after departure. Video footage posted on Twitter captures the incident. In a statement, a spokesperson for the Atlanta-based carrier said safety is always our priority. We apologise to our customers on Delta Flight 2481 from Charlotte to Detroit that returned to Charlotte shortly after departure following a reported aircraft fuel issue. The aircraft landed and taxied to the gate under its own power, where it underwent inspection. Customers were re-accommodated on alternative flights out of Charlotte to most quickly get on their way to their respective destinations. Safety, as always, remains Delta's top priority. I feel nervous that they felt like they needed to say that twice. A passenger on board the flight recounted the incident. I was sitting on the wing seat on the left and looked to the right. That sounds like I feel like that sounds like a line from Time Warp for some reason. That thing was spewing gas from the wing like a fire hydrant. I'm not an expert on this, but I thought something wasn't right. The passenger said, No kidding. There's more to the story there, but I won't go into it. Obviously this is a very, very rare incident. I know we can't really sort of guess. Is this, and again, forgive my naivety here, is this essentially a screw up with refueling, perhaps, John?
No, I suppose it's a screw loose.
Screw loose. No, yeah, it's a possibility, but every once in a while, airplanes get essentially grumpy.
Right. Yeah.
And the valves won't seat right, and you have the tanks in the wings, and then there's usually an additional tank up there called a surge tank. It's out towards the tip, and that's to allow excess fuel to go into that surge tank, usually without going overboard. And it's also attached to a vent, which allows pressurized air as they're flying to go back into the fuel tanks themselves, so you're not getting a vacuum as you suck the fuel out of the tanks
Right.
while you're in flight. And just every once in a while, valves won't sit right. There's usually a check valve in there, and it won't seat, and then the fuel escapes out the wingtip. We've seen this on a few occasions. I think the latest one I remember prior to this was a CRJ, similar issue, fuel just streaming out the right wingtip or left wingtip, and leaving a nice trail. It's not a huge issue. You notice that pilots are like, okay, are we underweight enough to land? Yeah, okay, great, let's go land. And you just don't want to continue on. We don't want to run that wing dry because we're constantly siphoning it out. That valve isn't seating properly, and air's not coming in. It's just going to keep siphoning the fuel out of the wing potentially, and that could be a problem. But this is pretty much a non-event other than leaving a bunch of gas on the runway, and that makes it a bit slick.
Yeah, Aaron P in the chat room says he finds it odd that they taxi to the ramp. Surely you'd want to stop, he says, and be checked out first rather than pour fuel all over the ramp. Maybe inaccurate reporting.
I'm going to guess it's probably just was left out of the story. Anytime that somebody returns to the field and they're saying they got a fuel leak, I guarantee they hit the bell, and the trucks are out there waiting for them, and they're going to follow them. And there's a truck following them all the way back to the gate, just in case. And it's never really generally a concern. I mean, jet fuel, again, the worst thing about jet fuel is it's very oily. Can be very slick when it gets onto the ramp, especially if you get any kind of water mixing with it. It's very slick. But from a fire hazard, I've watched the demonstrations where they take a lit cigarette and toss it into it. Nothing happens. So
I just had vision of some poor guy running behind the aircraft with a big jug going, "Slow down!" Perhaps not. Anyway, moving swiftly on. John, you have got the next story, and from AlJazeera.com, and it's about a near midair crash. Near midair crash, I might say.
Yeah, so again, from AlJazeera.com, Nepal selects 2 controllers after flights avert midair crash. The Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal suspends 2 employees of the Air Traffic Controller Department for carelessness. The Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal has suspended 2 employees of the Air Traffic Control Department for carelessness. The aviation body spokesman Jagannath Nirola has told the Press Trust of India news agency. Nepal's CAAN on Sunday wrote that Director General of Civil Aviation of India to probe why the Air India plane, which was on hold at an altitude of 19,000 feet, due to high traffic at Kathmandu Airport, suddenly descended and narrowly missed colliding with Nepal Airlines aircraft flying at 15,000 feet. We have written to the DGCAI requesting them to evaluate the occurrence and take actions as deemed and inform us accordingly. The CAN spokesperson told the Reuters news agency. He added that the aviation body was formed a committee to look into the incident. A warning system alerted the pilots, which averted the disaster, PTI reported on Sunday. The Nepal Airlines plane was inbound from Kathmandu to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and Air India airplane was coming to Kathmandu from New Delhi. Similarly, we have sent letters to the Indian Civil Aviation Regulatory Body to investigate into possible fault of Air India pilot and take action, Nirula said. The pilot is notorious for its poor air safety. The latest incident comes less than 2 months after the Yeti Airlines crash in western Nepal, which killed all 72 on board. A government committee is due to submit its report to ascertain the cause of the crash. So, yeah. So TCAS, traffic collision avoidance system that all the aircraft pretty much are sporting nowadays. Again, this saves the day here. What caused why this aircraft descended? That definitely is going to be something important. Listen to the audio tapes. Make sure there wasn't a communication error where one aircraft took another's call, or was there a miscommunication or a bad instruction given to them, or did they just do something on their own, which should be easy to ascertain. Hopefully, they were able to get the CVRs off of both aircraft, and they had the audio tapes from ATC, be able to compare all that.
So, John, in your history of flying, have you ever had a TCAS advisory when you've been flying?
Yeah, multiple times. We've had RAs. Usually, it's from a smaller general aviation aircraft, or from an aircraft climbing out of an airport as we're approaching it on one of the arrivals. Charlotte was actually kind of noticeable for that. We would usually have the aircraft already in sight, knowing that they were going to stop, but their rate of climb would cause it, because the aircraft are just looking at each other and saying, okay, he's climbing really fast, but they don't know that we're going to stop or not. But if you're getting RA, you're going to usually follow it unless you clearly know that that's the aircraft, and then you can avoid it in other means. It's generally eye-opening when they first get the first alert, because the voice is extremely loud when it calls out traffic, and then when it does go to the RA, it's giving you instructions, clear instructions to descend or climb, maintain altitude, and on many aircraft, it'll even give you symbology on the primary flight display on where to go to maneuver the aircraft away in a safe manner.
I was looking at a YouTube clip from somebody this week. I always thought that having had a TCAS RA, it was obviously, as you say, you're following the instructions, and often the autopilot's engaged at this stage anyway. I mean, presumably you're carrying out a manual manoeuvre at this point in order to comply with the TCAS RA. But this article on YouTube was saying, oh, it's entirely automatic and the plane does it. That's not necessarily the case, is it?
Most airplanes is not the case. 747 is definitely not. Boeing's just not an automatic thing. I don't know that Airbuses, 320s do this. I would kind of think that the older ones do not. And yeah, it's a manually flown thing. It's not huge movements you're doing. You're not it's not an acrobatic maneuver. It's just a quick click the autopilot off, pull the nose up a couple of degrees smoothly, because remember, you still have people in the back oftentimes up. And I can recall my very first time I was flying a Saab 340. We're flying across Chesapeake Bay, and all of a sudden we get this almost immediate TCAS RA, not even the alert first, and it was just, it's automatic, yeah. 2 button pushes on the autopilot. Excuse me, quick flinch on my fingers to just bring the nose up, and it was over almost that quick. And it's not been much different than the other time I've ever had it. We train this in the simulator every year. Oftentimes now we're doing reversal TCAS RAs, where initially you might say descend and then change to a climb, because they're making the other aircraft being non-compliant, just to keep you on your toes. And it's good, but you have to do it smoothly, because you don't want to throw your flight attendants or passengers around, and definitely don't want to float them off the ceiling. Neither one of those are good options.
Yeah, I don't suppose that's a problem you really have as it now, I suppose, because your passengers are in boxes.
Generally speaking, yes, but we still do fly passengers with the Atlas. We have several aircraft on the 747 fleet that do it, and we still have 76s that do passenger flying as well. So it's certainly a possibility that can occur for us. It's just, our flight regimes generally are not, nobody's getting around us very close, because they see we're heavy aircraft, and nobody wants to play with those, because we tend to turn things upside down for them.
So, Mr. Bounds, you have got the next story, haven't you? All about an airline that we've talked about quite a bit on the show.
Yeah, definitely. It's on flightglobal.com, and the headline says Loganair to expand Heathrow operations after leasing slots. UK regional carrier Loganair has reiterated its call for slots at London's Heathrow Airport to be made permanently available for domestic connectivity after announcing it will expand its fledgling operation at the congested hub by leasing more slots. Loganair began flying the Heathrow Isle of Man Heathrow route back in late 2021, using slots temporarily vacated at the airport during the pandemic. Later, securing those slots permanently. It's now secured access to 30 additional weekly slot pairs at Heathrow under a lease agreement with British Airways, which takes effect in May. It says the slots will enable it to develop regional connectivity from UK domestic destinations to Heathrow, and the new slots will enable Loganair to operate up to 6 daily weekly services. Route details will be announced in the coming days, it says. Loganair Chief Executive Jonathan Hinkle said, "We're delighted to be growing our operations at Heathrow, having taken these important first steps ourselves to provide new connectivity to and from the UK regions under this agreement. It's now essential for the UK government to initiate the process needed to reform competition remedies to provide access to Heathrow for the UK regions." Hinkle cites the changes to Heathrow's tariffs for regional aircraft operating on UK domestic routes, which took effect this year, as critical to the viability of Loganair's plans at the airport. Yes, I mean, it's really important, isn't it, for the regional operations side, especially for the Isle of Man, Ronald's Way, to be able to get in and out of major airport hubs as well. I was remembering the first time I ever went on a Loganair aircraft, 1986,
Cool.
Edinburgh to Belfast City, shorts 360 on a extremely blustery day. Yeah, that was proper flying. That was for sure. But their fleet has been modernised somewhat since then. So good luck to them. I hope they do well with it.
It still amuses me, don't it, Nev? When the times that we've been up to Heathrow at the tower there at Heathrow, I think it was the last time that I was there, and you're so used to it, you Heathrow seeing large commercial jet airliners landing there, and then to see, one of these come in,
little turboprop.
Yeah, it's just really random.
Yeah.
Well, Heathrow doesn't really have much in the way of propeller operated aircraft at all. Obviously, Flybe were running the Dash 8,
yeah.
And then back in the day, KLM ran a service. I think it was KLM, City Hopper service, which was on a Fokker 50 from Heathrow to Eindhoven and back several times a day, which everybody used to call the Philips aircraft, because that's where all the Philips employees were, down in Eindhoven. And 44 people out of the 50 people on the aircraft work for Philips electronics back in the day.
Wow.
You don't see much in the way of turboprop operations at all.
I know. I'm sure they're excited that they have a turboprop in, but that must cause planning issues, because the separation required surely must be quite full on.
Well, talking to our ATC fella that we happen to know there, he was saying that the meetings he's had with the airlines and all the rest of it, and they are able to keep up a decent speed on final approach as well. And of course, don't forget Loganair run a fleet of Embraer aircraft as well, so it's not just the turboprop operations that they've got. So I don't know what they're going to use on that route. They haven't actually said.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it's certainly quite capable of mixing it with the heavy stuff. But of course, you couldn't bring it in behind, an A350 or a 747, or
it'd be a bit of a wash, would they not?
Without sensible, distances between the two. Absolutely.
Indeed.
Have you got much experience on flying this sort of style of aircraft, John, in your past?
Yeah, I flew 2 years on Saab 340s. It was 34-seat turboprop, and we mixed it up with everybody. I think the only time I had a bad experience was following a 757 one time into Washington Dulles, and despite being 12 miles behind it, we got rolled up on a wing and got spit out facing 90 degrees the wrong direction.
Oh, wow.
With at night, which was even better. And
good
came out of it.
Good visibility then, yeah.
Well, it was good. It was good and clear, thank God.
Yeah.
The captain was flying pilot and muttered some words, and I got out wake turbulence for our call sign, and said, "Hey, what were we following?" They said 757, which are 12 miles behind it. And I said, "Well, we just hit their wake." And I think what happened was the Blue Ridge Mountains off to the west of Dulles are very smooth terrain-wise, and the wind was out of the west. And I think basically just it lifted up the wake turbulence back up to get us. And so the air traffic controller took kindly to us and vectored us extremely far away from the flight path of the 757. We landed on a different runway from them and called it a good day because we were still in one piece.
Well, yes, quite.
So so's RB211s, eh, Nev?
Well, actually, I was just thinking that it took I think both the FAA and EASA quite a while to realise what the wake turbulence category of the 757 was, or the potential of it, I think, because I think it then ended up going up a level in terms of spacing behind, if I remember correctly. This is going back some time now, but yeah.
No, you're absolutely correct. They did up it. It was just below the max. The max weight of the aircraft was just below the heavy category, but the design of the wing, especially without the winglet, made that wake turbulence just a lot worse. And it was a nice. I didn't need to put out the flaps very much early on, and that all adds to wake turbulence. That vortice out in the wing gets stronger the slower you are on a clean wing. That's all the things they describe in the manual that causes the strongest wake turbulence. And unfortunately, on that night, we got it. But mixing it up with the heavier aircraft or the bigger aircraft, we can do it. We just use techniques to stay a little above it. We watch like a hawk if it's on visual conditions where they touch down. Make sure that we touch down past them and don't play with them. But even at 7.4, we get rocks wake turbulence.
Would you would you fly deliberately slightly above the glide slope in that sort of situation, knowing that there's something else in front of you?
Oh, absolutely. We just fly, good half dot high with the Saab for sure, just to avoid if we were falling behind somebody that was a bigger aircraft. And heavies, we were going to have that 6 mile spacing. So we're pretty sure that it was going to be away, but we still paid attention closely to where they touched down. There are weird conditions where the vortices can kind of just sit there and hover right above the ground. You don't want to run into those things in a unplanned manner because it's quite violent. I can recall when I worked the ramp at a 240SX with a sunroof, and I had taken the sunroof out, had the windows down, and I was blasted out and went right underneath the flight path of a 747 that was departing, and it was like Thor's hammer hit my car when that wake vortex hit the car, and like everything flew up inside, and I was like, what the heck just happened to me?
Yeah, I bet.
But then I saw what had just flown by. I went, oh yeah, wow,
that'll be it then.
Yeah, I was sitting in various car parks at Heathrow back in the day, watching aircraft coming in, and the 757 especially, when they were running on the shuttle routes for Edinburgh, Belfast, Glasgow from Heathrow, you'd see the aircraft come across, and then just as it was about to touch down, you'd hear this sound. And that was obviously the part of the wake vortices of the aircraft which it was creating. So yeah, phenomenal. But what a great aircraft, though. What a shame we're not
gorgeous
flying it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a different opinion on that.
Well,
obviously.
yeah.
Actually, I tell you what. Before we move on, it was nice to see. On Wednesday, I was checking out the guys' feed over at Airliners Live up at Manchester, and there was the Icelandair 75 that came in with. They have the winglets on that, the shark fin winglets on there, and it was a special livery one that they've got. It's a really special sort of design livery they've got, but it's still honestly the chat when you're watching that show, when the 75 comes in, the chat room goes wild. The 75 is just such a popular aircraft with spotters and people alike. So,
no comment.
Well, if you ask all the airlines pretty much in the U.S. what they want, they will all say they want a 757 replacement.
Really?
Straight out.
Really?
Oh yeah, they will. They will bend the ear of any Boeing executive they will get their hands on. And be quite blunt, they want a replacement that's 7.5 derived.
Wow.
Interesting.
I hear 7.5s make great jump aircraft too.
And moving on.
We've got the next story coming to us from Armando, actually. He sent us in a video for this next story, and it's coming from airwaysmag.com.
Hey guys, I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about this article that was published in Airways Magazine, kind of get your thoughts on this, and some of perhaps the team's thoughts on the statements made by the Airline Pilots Association here in the United States. This is all sort of in response to the looming pilot shortage that has been threatening commercial airlines post-pandemic, and really we had talked about it before the pandemic, then it was kind of eased and then made worse. And 2022 was filled with pilots striking, demanding pay raises and retirements. 2023 has seen U.S. airports kind of riddled with aircraft near misses, which is a combination of airline operations, FAA operations. Some of these are results of fewer experienced pilots, experienced operators, air traffic controllers, some longer hours, more stressful working conditions. One of the questions that this article actually brought up was, in order to address the looming pilot shortage, how do we get younger generations excited about working in commercial aviation? And I'm experiencing this with my involvement in the Reno air races, where really it's just not a thing that is attractive to younger people, really anybody under the age of 40 anymore. So the largest airline pilot union here in the United States, well actually here in the world, it represents more than 66,000 pilots at 40 U.S. and Canadian airlines. So that's the Airline Pilots Association, ALPA. They made a statement that said, we don't have a pilot shortage. We do have a shortage of airline executives willing to stand by their business decisions to cut air service and be upfront about their intentions to skirt safety rules and hire inexperienced workers for less pay. That's a pretty bold and controversial, potentially controversial statement. Now, Airways Magazine had an initial plan of conducting an interview with ALPA. The association instead sent them the transcript of its president and a Boeing 767 captain, Jason Ambrosi's, his testimony before the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation hearing. They had a hearing called Strengthening the Aviation Workforce, which was actually held just a couple weeks ago on March 16, 2023. And the answers, well, they said that the answers to some of Airways Magazine's questions were actually in the testimony. So the magazine kind of summarized the main points of Captain Ambrosi's testimony as it pertains to the pilot shortage claims. So the association asserts that some airlines are trying to weaken safety standards and training standards and deflect attention from their profit-first business decisions to cut service and hire inexperienced aviators for less money by using the fictitious argument that there aren't enough pilots to go around. Another bold statement. Now, instead of focusing on changes to the fundamental issues connected with these profit-driven business models, the association argues that some airlines are using the pilot shortage claim in order to weaken training and safety standards. Again, this is coming from an ALPA spokesperson. 2 years ago, before the commercial aviation industry was on the verge of this economic catastrophe, the pandemic was believed to be the genesis of the commercial airline pilot shortage. However, some data shows that airlines in the U.S. received financial lifelines totaling $63 million. That's American Airlines, Delta Airlines, United Airlines, Southwest Airlines, receiving their fair share of pandemic subsidies. This did keep pilots, and I was at an airline that was able to keep all of its pilots and ground personnel because of a subsidy, a COVID subsidy. So this kept pilots, among other aviation workers, from unemployment and set the aviation industry in readiness for recovery, which we're now seeing. Now, further, according to FAA data, the U.S. is producing more pilots than it did pre-pandemic era. So In the U.S. Senate committee hearing testimony, Captain Ambrosi told the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation that he was on the front lines of the aviation industry during the pandemic and can attest to the fact that the choices made during COVID to downgrade pilots to smaller equipment, to park aircraft, to furloughs pilots, and to put pilots on inactive status resulted in a large training backlog. And we have talked about that on the show. I experienced it firsthand when I was down at the Delta Airlines Training Center doing an ATP CTP course, and I saw those simulators, and those instructors are essentially going about 20 hours a day, 4 hours for maintenance. Now, Captain Ambrosi in the testimony continued, quote, when demand and subsequently growth returned more quickly than some airlines anticipated, most of these pilots had to be retained. This necessary process is time sensitive or time intensive and expensive. It also relies on a training footprint that includes personnel and simulator devices that were not designed for a global pandemic of this magnitude. He continued that with the recovery and thanks to this committee's actions during the pandemic, airlines are hiring pilots as companies expand market share and networks. These actions have further complicated the current labor market by creating attrition with pilots moving between airlines. And that is another thing that we've talked about on the show. He continued by saying that pilots are also forgoing less desirable airlines in favor of those that offer well-paying jobs and a higher quality of life. He also said that this too will resolve itself with time because both regional pilot contracts are improving and the mainline hiring will eventually stabilize. Now, it is worth noting that ALPA is calling on Congress to support the current first officer qualification standards and to oppose any attempts to diminish commercial airline safety regulations. And we saw that with, I believe it was Republic Airlines was making a bid to make their hiring standards 750 hours, claiming that their training program was as good as the military and that they should match the same restricted ATP minimums as military pilots, which obviously we all disagreed with, and it was eventually shot down by both the FAA and Congress and everybody. Now, the association ALPA claims that current air safety regulations would be weakened by some congressional proposals, which would also prioritize airline profits over aviation safety, and that ALPA is committed to thwarting any attempts to roll back essential aviation safety regulations and vehemently opposes any attempts to weaken safety standards. So, what was the suggestion? Again, the question was, how can we inspire the next generation to pursue careers in commercial aviation? Well, ALPA suggests funding several pilot incentives, such as assisting students with high flight training costs, subsidized loans for flight training in partnership with 2- and 4-year aviation colleges and universities, and excluding students from paying interest on loans while they are enrolled in school. That's in order to sustain a robust pilot pipeline. Now, additionally, they advocate the growing number of students who graduate from accredited 2- and 4-year aviation programs, which acquire the license required to work as an airline pilot, or the ATP, creating awareness of aviation jobs available among today's competitive workforce, and providing those students with the support and mentorship they need to confidently enter the field. Another suggested way is attracting more workforce diversity, which we've also talked about on the show. Creating role models so that women and people of color can view themselves as future airline pilots, and increasing Title IV funding for hiring professional pilots with degrees from institutions that serve underrepresented groups, such as historically black colleges and universities, and giving sizable grants to institutions that serve minorities to launch aviation programs that help these groups and expose them to aviation experiences. Now, on a personal note here, we have talked about that on the show. We've seen some of the airlines over in Europe claiming that they're implementing some hiring programs but targeting underrepresented populations. And I think within the team here, we decided that those are great initiatives, but they have to be followed up with action. It's so incredibly expensive over there in Europe as well as here in the US to become a professional airline pilot, get all the way to your ATP. So I think some of these airlines organizations, maybe not airlines, but some of these organizations are also kind of creating some of these programs as outreach programs, but perhaps not really putting the teeth behind them to really make a difference in the pilot hiring process. Now, another idea that ALPA proposed was to permanently establish the Women in Aviation Advisory Board as a body dedicated to increasing and assisting women in order to inspire them to pursue careers in aviation. For instance, women currently make up over 50% of the nation's workforce here in the United States. They are notably underrepresented in the aviation sector, accounting for only 2% of airline mechanics, 4% of flight engineers, 5% of repair personnel, and 26% of air traffic controllers, 18% of flight dispatchers, and only 6% of professional airline pilots. Now, on one final note, Captain Ambrosi from ALPA is quoted in the March 2023 issue of Airline Pilot in regards to airline safety and Federal Aviation Administration Extension Act of 2010 and pilot training, saying that it is no accident that the airline passenger fatality rate has dropped by 99.8% since that law was passed in 2010. He continued to say that this extraordinary record demonstrates that the current system is working in the way it was intended, and that the United States is creating thousands of new pilots each year who have the experience and training they need to ensure that this nation maintains its place as the global safety leader. Now, I welcome your thoughts and your discussion on ALPA and Captain Ambrosi's statements to the U.S. Senate in the testimony. And of course, I would love to hear the thoughts of the chat room. And even if you're listening to this and you have some strong opinions or even questions, just send them to the show at podcast@planetalkinguk.com, and it would make some great discussion for a little bit later.
Now, I mean, this is an interesting one. I mean, I think we're all in agreement. There is still a pilot shortage, isn't there? I mean, that's just goes without saying, surely.
Yeah, there's reasons behind that, and I mean, I don't know about what John thinks and Nev, but for me, it is financial. It's not a cheap thing to do, especially here in the UK. And by doing the homework that I've done over the last sort of 6 or 7 months, as I've been looking at possibly completing my license and doing it, I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to go and do it in the US because it's so much cheaper in the US to do it. But obviously, I think we need to get somewhere back to the stage where airlines, because they used to years ago, some of the airlines here in the UK used to offer schemes where pilots could have either part funding or half funding, or their license funded by the airline itself. But I don't think that happens anymore. John?
Yeah, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head there. When I learned to fly initially, I got my private in 1993. It was $3,000-ish, maybe a little bit less, start to finish. I was very focused. I was doing it sort of almost on a professional level, flying twice a day, 5 days a week, ground school 3 nights a week, while still working part-time. And I got it done in 41 hours. Required hours was 40. If you can go into these very focused programs, and that's all you need to really do, very dedicated program, you can do it on a cheaper basis. But the flight hour cost was significantly less. I think I was paying $19 for the flight instructor, maybe $70 for 152. So, it was a reasonable price point to get in the air, learn how to fly. Nowadays, you're hearing these people going into these programs, and just to get the commercial, they're talking $100,000, and that's not even getting a CFI, double I, anything where you can then start really making legitimate career start to build up your hours. I'm definitely a big believer in this 1,500-hour rule. I was a captain as the transition occurred from the previous setting to the of just a commercial certificate, which was a 250-hour minimum, and we were hiring 300-hour pilots. And the training level, the experience level, and their ability to think increased so much when we got to 1,500 hours, especially as an instructor and you're training. You're bringing in this ability to think ahead a little bit, especially after you've gotten comfortable with the aircraft. The total training costs that I see in Europe, I mean, are just astronomically stupid, really. And I think that they need to go back into that mindset where, back when I went to my second set of training, when I went out to Arizona, it was a KLM school out there. There was a Sabina school out there. Lufthansa had a school out there. JAL, I think, had a school over in California. These were all sponsored airlines. Chinese airlines, they sponsor their students to come over. I think that that's really what's going to have to go back to that model, even for the U.S. carriers. I think that the regionals are probably doomed as a dying beast in the U.S., and probably it's going to be similar models to what you see in the Europe, where they get wrapped into the major carriers that they're flying for, and they're just become a subcomponent, and it's a straight flow through.
So we've got this sort of claim, haven't we, with that in mind, where airlines are potentially putting profits above safety. I mean, how does that feel like it's sort of ringing true? I mean, how do we feel about that?
I think Mike Rowe puts it best as a safety professional: safety third.
Right. Okay.
Safety third is a legitimate statement, because you can't have safety without a business and money to run the business.
Yeah.
So you have to run the business first, and you need to do it in a safe manner. So safety's going to come after running the business, because if you don't have the business, there is no reason to be safe to begin with. I mean, it's just it's a fact of life. We can say safety first all the time, but it's not. Safety always, I think, is what the Coast Guard uses as their kind of training motto for their safety programs, and that's more appropriate. You have to have that safety always in your mindset. But they're going to push as much as they can. And could they create a program where they could get pilots into the air safely and at the same capable levels with less hours than they currently require? Yeah, I think they could. But it's going to take a much greater commitment financially for them to begin that, start that, and get it realized to the point where they get their return on investment. I'm not sure if they're capable or willing to do that at this point.
I mean, if I go, so as the nervous flyer amongst us, obviously that makes me feel quite apprehensive about the potential there, if you like, for these companies to be sort of putting that. And I completely understand where you're coming from there, John, because I mean, of course you're right. Without the business model there, without the business existing, there is no need for the safety, I guess. And I suppose. There again, I mean, we've mentioned it before. Perhaps there is quite a strong argument for what Ryanair, of all people, do, where actually their maintenance program is actually quite a bit more rigorous than a lot of other airlines, purely because they rely so heavily on the aircraft being in the right place at the right time. They're actually potentially spending more money on their routine maintenance, if you like, because actually if a plane goes tech in their model, it costs them way more money than if spending a bit of money on extra maintenance and all that kind of thing. So perhaps there's a strong argument for there being like the best of both worlds, if you like. You can make that need for very extreme maintenance and safety, if you like, to work for your model, rather than perhaps putting it, as you say, safety third. Maybe I don't know. It's well,
it's all about an ROI. If your return on investment is short and visible, it's much easier for the bean counters of the business to make it work. Problem we have in the safety community is, when we do everything right, nobody sees anything.
Well, yes.
And that's the objective. Also, what you're seeing is this mentality difference between the U.S. Canadian markets, where this time building and experience is valued more than the classroom experience of the European models. European pilots are regularly going through and being thrown into a 737 or an A320 at 300 hours with a multi-crew pilot's license, and the training style is a little bit different. There's a much greater focus on the academics classroom portion. They have the to my view, the ridiculous amount of tests. I know it's going to be that can be an argument onto its own, but it's just a different mindset of how they develop it. They're able to get the pilots into the system maybe quicker. The costs are still ridiculously high because of the way things work in the European economic zone there. And I think there's got to be some balance that's going to be brought together and figure this out. I think that the entire world would benefit from homogenizing the training standards, homogenizing the licensing, fully allow people to take their skills and capabilities to where they can market it. There's going to be a lot of protectionistic statements being made, and I know that ALPA, my own union, would definitely be first and foremost. But we're currently suffering from a pilot shortage in the U.S. My company has chosen to alleviate that by hiring a lot of Australians, because a lot of Australian pilots are out of business, out of their jobs, and we've been bringing them in droves to the point that almost every flight has an Aussie on board. So,
Christ, mate.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea, John, I just done a quick look to see what our local clubs promote it as here. Sort of rough average around here and around the UK as well. You're looking to get your private pilot's license here at the moment is around about, in dollars, about just over $11,000.
Yeah. We'll take a couple of comments from the chat room, if we may, and the first things first. Let's deal with the elephant in the room here. Dirk is saying, "Can Armando please stop appearing in his offensive Pilatus shirt, please?" That was the first thing that he was saying. And Nick in the chat room there is saying, "As my feeling is that businesses will always do the legal minimum they can to get away with to satisfy the letter of the law. Shareholders will always have a strong emphasis on where operating costs can be reduced." Where are we? Well, Aaron P is commenting, saying that number of hours is not the whole picture. The quality of training is key. Also, very much echoing, I think, your point there, John. I've flown with some very capable low-hour pilots who have, I'm just trying to find the rest of the message, who have been, it's not all there, unfortunately. That's a shame. Dirk is also asking, is there a difference between in training quality between different airlines, that hours matter for some and don't for others? John, is that anything you can comment on?
Airlines have always in the U.S. have certainly always had their preferences depending on which carrier it was, how they tended to hire. Historically, I think we always looked at Delta as hiring Navy pilots, halfway joking because of the double-breasted uniforms they wear, like the Navy. But military pilots were definitely more welcome there. FedEx, same. FedEx has an exhaustive, or at least did have an exhaustive testing prior to even getting in the door, and I believe Delta had something similar as well. Others are looking for ability to fog a mirror and retain the pulse. And it's just a matter of needs and experience. Oftentimes, what's most important to us when we're doing the hiring is everybody generally has the same qualifications, give or take, maybe more or less hour experience, but it's, can you sit in the cockpit for 6, 8, 9, 17 hours and not kill one another and work effectively?
I mean, that's going to be a big factor, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Well, it is, and sometimes it goes wrong. And I've been on the side of the plane, on the right side, so being the chameleon, and looking at the captain going, "Oh my word, please let me out. I don't want to do this anymore."
Yeah.
But having to keep it safe, and that's not a fun experience. And you go, well, sometimes you kind of wonder how people get hired to do that job when they have these kind of personalities. And it is what it is, but it does greatly affect safety. It does affect your quality of life, and your customer service capabilities will be affected if you don't have a good team on board the aircraft. If the front and the back of the plane aren't working together, then there's a problem.
Absolutely. Right. Great conversations, guys. Thanks for that. Genuinely really interesting. Carlos, if we can perhaps move on and just whittle through the next couple of stories, because I don't want to do what I like to refer to as a Captain Al and run out of time for the military. So if you could launch into Story 07, please.
Yeah, the next story comes to us from ABC News and onemileatatime.com, and Cuban migrants flying to Key West Airport on a motorized hang glider.
As you do.
The pictures look amazing. I think I'll try building one of these myself. 2 Cuban migrants landed at Key West International Airport on a motorised hang glider on Saturday morning, authorities said. They were taken into US Border Patrol custody after landing at approximately 10:30 local time, according to Monroe County Sheriff Office, which has deputies assigned to the airport. No serious injuries were reported, which is surprising.
A miracle, I think.
Looks. The Sheriff's Office and the Chief Patrol Agent Walter Solstar shared images of the powered hang glider following the incident. In response to the inquiry from ABC News, a US Customs and Border Protection spokesperson referred to Slosar's Twitter account for information on the incident. Cuban migrants arrive in all manner, typically in makeshift homemade boats, and Monroe County Sheriff's Office spokesperson Adam Lindhart told ABC, this is not the typical event, but it's not completely unusual. Chris Ferreira, the Key West local and self-proclaimed aviation buff, told ABC News he was driving his golf cart nearby when he heard the distinct noise of the hang glider's engine.
They have similar engines, right?
Pretty much, yeah. He looked up and knew that it shouldn't be there, he said. Now, obviously the pictures we've got here, I don't know if you've got, you've flashed them.
I haven't, unfortunately, mate. They're not in the right place.
They're not, well, yeah. I mean,
it's basically it looks like a lawnmower with a big sail on it. I think that's the best way to describe it.
I have to say, if that is hand built or built from bits you find in the back of your garage on the shelf,
yeah,
it's not a bad job.
No, it's not. I mean, it's clever. Basically, I mean, it's got small wheels on it. It looks like a massive buggy. Like a push chair that you'd have like a child in with a big sort of sail and stuff. I mean, it looks pretty.
I mean, the wheels look like they came off my dad's wheelbarrow, but
more than likely, yeah, absolutely.
Looks like my Loganair 360 short 360.
Oh no! Let's hope not.
I mean, it's not much worse than ones that you can get in the US for a trike hang glider like that. I mean, it's wow. That's just impressive.
Yeah.
Very impressive. They did that and they got it across there. And from the navigation perspective,
yeah,
indeed.
Open water for 90 miles of border. That's
wow. No, they were using Waze. Fine.
Ballsy, I think, is the answer to that. Very ballsy.
Cojones.
Yes, absolutely.
You've got the next story, Nev, and BA are recruiting.
Yes, continuing the recruitment conversation, simpleflying.com tells us that BA and its subsidiary BA Euroflyer are bolstering their A320 pilot teams with direct entry job openings.
Ooh.
About time too. The British carrier is looking to bring in outside recruits to pilot its Airbus A320 family fleet ahead of the busy summer travel season. If they haven't got strikes at Heathrow, of course. Yes. Not BA, but the other folks. The first officer job post seeks experienced high-caliber pilots for both British Airways and its short-haul subsidiary BA Euroflyer. The experienced recruitment will be higher to apply to British Airways, 500 hours or 100 sectors on the A320 or 1,500 hours on an aircraft type that satisfies zero flight time training and flown this type in the last 12 months, while pilots applying to BA Euroflyer will require 500 hours or 100 sectors on an aircraft that satisfies ZFTT and flown this type in the last 12 months. The application process adds that preference will be given to pilots that currently hold an A320 rating and that all applicants must hold a UK Part FCL licence or have initiated the transfer process with the CAA. BA operates currently a fleet of 30 Airbus A319s, 86 A320s, 27 A321s, whilst BA Euroflyer has 7 A320-200s and 4 A321-200s. In October, BA's parent company, IAG, confirmed it will bolster its Airbus order book with an additional 37 A320neos, taking it to 59. And getting on the roster at BA or BA Eurofly can lead to major career opportunities, including the chance to move up to captain and pilot larger aircraft once you've racked up seniority. First-year pilots at BA Euroflyer can expect to earn around £65,000, which will go up year by year as per the airline's 12-year pay scale. Euroflyer pilots will also be placed on the BA's master seniority list, granting the same bidding rights as a mainline BA pilot. Spokesperson for the airline says that some of the benefits include staff travel benefits from day one, a competitive employment package, a large route network, state-of-the-art training facilities, career development options, including command opportunities, and the opportunity to move to other fleets, including long-haul further into your career. Company benefits include defined contribution pension schemes and generous life assurance cover, along with several voluntary benefit schemes such as private medical cover, dental and critical illness cover, technology scheme, cycle to work and electric car scheme. In July, the carrier announced it would cut 11% of its summer schedule, or around 1,000 flight cancellations across Greece, Spain and Portugal, which affects approximately 1 million passengers. The airline reopened its recruitment scheme last summer in light of the shortages, emphasising the development of new talent for its short-haul fleet, particularly pilots for the A320.
Quite right, absolutely, and quite the benefits package there, actually, isn't it? It's if you can get in, it's worth being there, I think.
Well, yes, but you might say that. I mean, often, there's conversations with the union about pay scales, and they've all taken a hit on their pensions some time ago to help out the airline, and the more experienced ones would say, right, it's now time for the airline to pay us back for our sacrifices that we made. But nonetheless, the 1,500-hour rule is a good one. I think that will mean that they can hopefully get more people through, but pilot shortage is a real thing once again, isn't it?
I wonder whether they'll get any easy pilots, Nev, who want to move to the BA.
Yeah, you never know, do you? Because easier all Airbus fleet as well, with 319s and 320s and 321s. So.
Well, it definitely looks like they're trying to poach from other carriers in Europe.
Yeah,
but to give perspective to the pay wise, it's about half the pay for a regional first officer in the U.S. now. But they're offering to fly a 320.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, dear, and there you go. Moving on, John, you've got the last story. And we're going to get the box of tissues ready for you here, because obviously it's a very sad story that might...
yeah.
John.
Yeah, so it says it's from the independent.co.uk. Private jumbo jet sold for scrap after just 30 hours in the air.
What?
We heard about this one. A privately owned Boeing 747 jumbo jet is being sold for scrap after just 30 hours in the air over a total of 16 flights. The aircraft, which was configured as a private VIP jet intended for a member of the Saudi royal family, remained on the tarmac for almost 10 years at Euro Airport, Basel, Mulhouse, Freiburg, at the border between France, Switzerland, and Germany. Plans to finish the jet with a lavish interior fell through. After failing to secure a new buyer, the aircraft was finally flown to Pinal Air Park in Arizona, where retired planes go for stripped parts. The $560 million Boeing BBJ was one of the just 10 privately owned jumbo jets. Heavily modified additions that boast a cabin space well over 5,000 square feet and are largely configured to attract governments and high net worth corporate clients. According to Connor Devar, a senior analyst at aviation analytics firm Cirium, the jet are jumbo in both name and nature. 10 were built in total, and this is the first one to be retired. I'll leave the rest of it there. So yeah, we heard about this at my company. It's depressing. I'm hopeful that maybe some of those parts will be recycled, put onto our planes. the aircraft is large, and it as a private jet, it was very niche. I think that a few of the Emirates had them, and were oftentimes configured with full surgical suites, and bathrooms and showers and bedrooms to allow them to go anywhere in the world nonstop at their beck and wish. It's a shame, but if the aircraft's not getting used and sat for 10 years, it's going to be in bad shape. It would take a long time to get back into shape to go flying. It's probably, in part-wise, worth more in parts than it is a going concern as an aircraft, because it's probably just a bare interior in there that the aircraft was delivered with, and would take a lot of work to get it ready to fly.
Yeah, Dirk S makes a good point, and that is absolutely correct, Dirk. I will be looking online for some more parts to fill the house.
Well, of course, yeah, absolutely, yes. When is the divorce scheduled, by the way, just out of interest?
Well, actually, fingers crossed. I'm hoping that over the Easter period, that I will hopefully be getting the blade mounted on the wall here when we redecorate the office. So hopefully the RB211 Stage 1 blade that I've got sitting in the spare room will be properly mounted on the wall in front of me here, which I can't wait to see.
Right.
So good.
I mean, presumably you have to have some structural work done to the house with all this extra stuff that you're hanging on the walls here.
I have got some specific, very, very, very important fixings to fix this on.
I can imagine. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's a shame no one else brought that, John, for how what it was. It was, but yeah, like you said.
Yeah.
Costs,
okay.
But
we are running out of time, I'm afraid.
Yes, moving on. It's time for the Captioneers, just for fun. It's sparked some interest this week in the show.
See what you did there?
And this week's picture was posted on Wednesday, as we do on our Facebook page. And for the benefit of our audio listeners, Nev, what is this week's picture?
Is this genuine, by the way?
It's not. No, it's not genuine.
No, I was going to say.
I think we need to have a little artistic license here, don't we, really? But it looks like a maintenance fella on the front of the aircraft with his gloves on and all the rest of it, trying to carry out some maintenance. Unfortunately, the engine appears to be on fire and is missing most of its cowling and various other parts.
Indeed. So it does look terribly unfortunate, doesn't it? It's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it? If as always, then if we are ready, do go through. I'll sit this one out if I may.
Yes, Neil comes up with one of the cabin crew misunderstood when he was asked to start the in-flight service.
Stuart says, this orange lampshade would look fabulous in my lounge.
Bill says, what hit the fan?
Stuart says, yeah, I wouldn't use this one. Let's park it up and... how long have we been up here?
A while, yeah.
Another one from Stuart says, always make sure your watch is tightly fastened. Yes.
Nicholas says, Armando's can-do attitude was really appreciated by all on board, but Carlos nearly choked on his tea when he saw the invoice for the speed tape.
John says a procedure misinterpretation leaves an engineer with a sticky problem after failing to defrost a chicken before firing it into the engine. Flame grilled chicken wings, anyone?
Yummy, my favourite.
Yeah, Nick says, well, at least Nev's Club Europe meal in seat 1 Alpha will be well cooked.
Cremated, I think.
Chris says, and to think I gave up wing walking to do this.
David says, can't see anything wrong here, mate.
Right.
That would be the answer you'd get from any engineer, I think.
Yeah. Bill says, tell engineering that we're going to need at least 2 rolls of duct tape to fix it.
Quite, absolutely. I mean, if you can't mend it with duct tape or WD-40, you just throw it away.
James says, it looks like something is missing from this engine. I can't quite place my finger on what exactly it is, but it doesn't look right. What do you think?
Yeah,
Co-worker.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Stuart says, yeah, if you just prize the cowl here. Oh, no.
Michael says it was his first day on the job, and yet he had the overwhelming feeling he may have fallen for a prank.
Yeah.
Very appropriate considering tomorrow is April the 1st.
Of course, yes, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Ian says Boeing and Airbus conduct in-flight maintenance trials.
Dirk, Carlos working the PTUK Master Studio. How is it going? Yes, very true.
Indeed.
Bob says, here's one we made earlier using common household products.
AKA gaffer
Okay.
tape, yeah, absolutely.
From Stephen, and mind my British accent, it's only a flesh wound.
Oh, very good.
Yes. What's that?
Sandra?
Monty Python, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, yeah. Sandra says, excuse me, sir, your engine is on fire.
James says, well, no wonder we can't get any thrust. Someone's installed this bolt right here without the washer.
Quite right, absolutely. Something to watch
I
out
like
for.
this one. From Dirk, Ryanair sharpening turnaround times even more by introducing in-route MRO.
I like that one. Rudy says, well, back to the drawing board.
Well, quite, indeed. Let's whiz through some of the things in the chat room. I'll do those if that's okay. Dirk S says, don't worry, that one will buff out. John Falk says, oil change, sir. Aaron P, he says, what do you mean your ATC slot is cancelled? Richard Adams says, I know the military do hot refuels sometimes, but this is ridiculous. I'll have it fixed in a jiffy, John Falk is also offering. Black Hawk, by the way, Nev, is suggesting that perhaps this is the new Seat 1A.
Well, I don't want to correct him, but that would be Seat 1 Foxtrot, as it's on the right-hand side.
Right, okay, of course, yes. And finally, always a stickler for the detail, isn't he? Finally, Richard Adams says, he'll be quite safe, he's wearing a fluorescent jacket. Health and safety boxes have all been ticked here.
Oh, yes, that's very
Absolutely,
true.
that is very, very true. There we go. Thanks for all your amazing entries. We'll do another one next week, Carlos, will we?
We will, yeah, Wednesday. Look out on Facebook, social media, and I'll pop another picture up there next Wednesday for you all to leave your witty comments on.
Indeed.
Well, it's that time of the show where Armando has saved the week this week by sending in all the videos for us. But he's got some great military stories for us. So, Matt, hit the button.
What's up, bogeys 13550, Angel 16, heading 340. Okay. 100 bogeys.
Our first military story is from thedrive.com. A U.S. Air Force RC-135 Rivet joint has conducted a sortie inside Finnish airspace, at least for the first time in recent memory, flying opposite the border with Russia. Now, these flights look set to become a little more routine as Finland continues to move through the process of joining NATO, something that the country's leadership decided to pursue following Russia's all-out military invasion of Ukraine last year. Now, some online tracking websites had the RC-135 serial number 62-4131 using the call sign Jake11 at the time, departing RAF Mildenhall in the UK earlier in the day. The aircraft then flew east over the English Channel, then the Netherlands, Germany, and Poland before turning north. When the plane did turn north, passing over Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, before crossing the Gulf of Finland and entering Finnish airspace. Once there, it conducted a number of orbits, as this aircraft tends to do, particularly on the southeastern end of the country facing Russia's Lake Ladoga and the strategic port city of St. Petersburg before returning back to RAF Mildenhall. Now, St. Petersburg is home to the headquarters for the Russia's Western Military District and some elements of the Russian Navy's Baltic Fleet. And with the exception of Finland, all the other countries that the RC-135 flew over in the course of this sortie are NATO members. In a statement today from the Finnish Defense Forces, they strongly suggested that this is the first time that a RC-135 from the U.S. Air Force or any other military crewed or uncrewed intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft had actually conducted a mission inside Finnish airspace. And of course, it was in coordination with that country's government. They did say that the statement that they put out did not say what type of aircraft, of U.S. aircraft, would be conducting those sorties. They said for operational security reasons. Now, the specific flight of the objectives weren't made public, as you can imagine. This story, which came from The Drive, which is part of the War Zone, they reached out to the Air Force for more information, and they basically just said that flight operations in international countries with international partners is part of normal bilateral, multilateral cooperations, and that the flights develop the interoperability, my favorite word, with the Finnish Defense Forces and improve the common situational awareness and strengthen national defense. As you can imagine, the flight path is very much in line with what a typical RC-135 rivet joint flight path or routine sortie looks like. Elsewhere in Europe, really all over the world, these airplanes have been flying around since the 50s. They are based on the C-135, re-engined, of course, which actually has been in service with the U.S. Air Force since the 60s, but also with the Royal Air Force in the United Kingdom. Just in the past couple years, they've acquired their own rivet joint capabilities. Now, traditionally, the sensors on these aircraft are just a variety of intelligence collection assets. It is manned. There are some offboarding systems, but the bulk of the aircraft is made up of airborne cryptologic language analysts, including data link operators, airborne analysts, mission supervisors, cryptologic linguists that actually speak foreign languages, sometimes multiple foreign languages. There's airborne systems engineers that maintain all the equipment. You can imagine it's a 707 filled with electronics equipment. And there are some electronic warfare operators that are, there for more electronic order of battle type thing, using sensors on the aircraft to develop, whether it's radar based or some kind of electronic intelligence to put together a picture with what the linguists in the back are putting together. Now, in this particular instance, details about the exact disposition of Russian air defenses, other forces along the border with Finland would be of great interest to the U.S. government and Finnish authorities and the rest of NATO, among others. Last year, it was reported that the Russian military was withdrawing forces from the areas opposite Finland in order to bolster the fighting units in Ukraine. However, in January, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu announced plans to establish a new army corps, typically a very large ground formation in kind of Russian parlance, with thousands of troops in the country's semi-autonomous Republic of Karelia, along with the Finnish border. How much progress Russia's military has done towards this? They've struggled to make up for some major personnel losses in Ukraine over the past year, but with the help of that controversial and partial mobilization, has actually made some progress in standing up this new unit. As you guys can imagine, this is of particular interest to NATO and the US and the UK and all of our Western allies, but it's most important that the people of Finland understand what the Russians are amassing across the border. This is kind of the bilateral relationship that the two countries have, and really all of the NATO countries have, where in return for allowing these sensitive aircraft to fly over their airspace, they may have done so in return for some sanitized information or maybe even raw intelligence that is most time pressing and time critical to Finland as to what Russia is trying to do. I can only imagine that we're going to see more of these intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance flights. The RC-135 rivet joint is just one of many intelligence aircraft that the U.S. and the NATO allies have. So I'm sure we'll see plenty of these flights happening, especially if Russia is making headway on creating these new units up there.
Incredible.
It's one of those aircraft that you see fly over us here locally, where me and Matt are, and it's one of those aircraft that you just cannot mistake for anything else because of that interesting nose cone on the
Right.
rivet on the
Okay.
aircraft. But yeah,
I bet I could.
no, I think even you would definitely. I think you would spot this and you would know it's military, Matt, if you saw this.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you say so.
Yeah,
If you say so.
I have faith in you, Matt. I have faith in you.
Good Lord.
Next story Armando's got for us in the military news this week comes to us from Eurasian Times, and it's all about the F-15 fighters.
From EurasianTimes.com, U.S. deploys F-15 fighters to launch retaliatory strikes in Syria after Iranian drones hit U.S. military personnel. Just hours after a military base housing U.S. troops was allegedly struck by an Iranian drone, the U.S. Central Command dispatched its most trusted and combat-hardened fighter, the F-15, to launch some retaliatory strikes. Tensions have significantly been increasing between these two adversaries after intelligence officials announced that an Iranian kamikaze drone struck the military base and killed a U.S. contractor. The Avenger missile defense system, known as the RLZ, was reportedly not fully operational during the alleged drone attack. The F-15 retaliatory attacks were carried out after this U.S. contractor died and 5 U.S. servicemen were injured, as well as a second U.S. contractor. According to some Pentagon media releases, the casualties resulted from an unmanned aerial vehicle on attack on a maintenance facility at a U.S.-led anti-ISIS coalition base in the Hasaka district or area in northeast Syria. That was on March 23rd. Now, the U.S. Department of Defense stated that the F-15E fighters assigned to Central Command launched an attack at approximately 2:40 in the morning local time. Now, U.S. intelligence officials said that the UAV was of Iranian origin and that the attack comes after extensive use of these sort of kamikaze drones against Ukraine. Iranian-made ones have been noted in the ongoing war. However, it's of course too soon to, figure out whether this was the first deadly Iranian kamikaze strike against U.S. forces. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin from the U.S., acting on orders from the U.S. president, stated that the strikes were carried out in retaliation for the incident and a series of recent operations against coalition forces in Syria by elements linked with the Iranian Republican Guard. Now, the deployment of the F-15 for the retaliatory strikes is significant given the impressive combat record of this, USIF fighter jet. It was fourth generation fighter jet, still being put into combat at a time when fifth and even sixth generation aircraft are under development. Now, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is a human rights organization headquartered in the United Kingdom, militia members backed by Iranian fired missiles. Militia members backed by Iran fired missiles towards the U.S. base in Syria in retaliation for the strike by the two F-15s of the U.S. Air Force. Now, on March 24th, U.S. forces in Syria came under attack twice within 45 minutes, and another U.S. personnel was injured as the hostilities are basically flaring between the Iranian-backed forces in Syria. The first attack used some multiple rockets that struck the coalition forces stationed at the Mission Support Center site. The second attack was conducted at a site called Green Village using 3 more drones, and the drones did manage to cause damage to some buildings. Now, the fresh attacks were reported after a barrage of unconfirmed allegations of gunfire exchanges and more strikes between U.S. and Iranian-backed militias in Syria that surfaced on social media of all places, and the U.S. Central Command that oversees military operations in this area has yet to kind of divulge any more secrets. So this looks like it's going to be another back and forth between the U.S. and some, I guess, government-sponsored forces in these contested areas. And obviously our our thoughts are with all those service members deployed out to the area, and their safety, of course, is our number one priority and everybody's number one priority. And let's hope that this kind of just doesn't escalate too much and we're able to, keep this down to a low boil.
Thanks, Armando, for that. And it's a case of if you hit us, we'll hit you back.
Yeah.
I think they're from the US.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and if you're going to do it, I think the F-15 is not a bad choice. I actually had to send a message to Mr. Warner during this week because we had an F-15 doing some interesting stuff over here on its own this week, Matt.
Mm.
It was one of those cases where someone messaged me on social media and said, "What is this?"
Yeah.
So I, done what we always do and get the old ADSB Exchange app open.
Yeah.
And found out it was an F-15. So
very good. Yes.
Yeah, very good. Next video up from Armando comes from the businessinsider.com, and it's all about the Ukraine's Air Force signing up pilots as it pushes for Western fighter jets.
From businessinsider.com, Ukraine's Air Force is now set to allow foreigners to serve as pilots and engineering specialists. That's according to a spokesperson stressing the fact that Ukraine will likely need some international recruits if and when it starts to receive Western combat aircraft. Yuri Inat, a spokesperson for the commander of the Ukraine's Air Force, said in a statement this last Thursday that foreign citizens will be able to join if they have the suitable military training. He did say that if they have military occupations such as a pilot or aviation engineer, these people can legally become servicemen of the armed forces of Ukraine. The spokesperson did say that the Ukraine is not currently lacking pilots because it is operating Soviet-era aviation equipment, but added that the need for specialists might increase if it receives new combat aircraft that it has been asking for. The spokesperson said that if we have F-16s or other types of equipment, then maybe foreigners will have to come with them because of the experience of people who have long been working with this equipment will be needed even for briefings. I think he meant more training and mission planning. I did say that the Air Force had been inundated with offers from people willing to help since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022, with some volunteers being from other countries. He did note that the Ukrainian army already has foreigners serving in certain military units, including an international legion of foreign soldiers. Ukraine's been pushing its allies to send its advanced military aircraft, as we've been talking about on the show for a couple months now. NATO members Poland and Slovakia, we talked about just last week, have already begun sending MiG-29 jets to Ukraine. But they've been seeking modern Western jets such as the F-16s for now a couple months, and that's kind of made the news. Business Insider's Christopher Woody reported on March 22nd that using F-16s has certain requirements which would prove challenging for Ukraine. He also wrote that acquiring the jets, training the pilots and engineers used to maintain them when transferring them to Ukraine could be a process that takes up to 2 years. The chief of aviation of Ukraine's Air Force, however, told the Times of London that Ukrainian fighter pilots would be ready to fly F-16 fighter jets in fewer than 6 months of training. Now, there was a retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Dan Hampton speaking to the Voice of America, popular radio station here, an internet radio station, that he said it would be faster to send pilots who know how to fly the F-16s already than to send Ukrainians to U.S. to begin a training program, which is a more plausible option now that Ukraine has said that foreigners can serve in its effort. Now, Business Insider's Isabel Van Hagen previously reported that Colonel Hampton, who is a decorated U.S. F-16 pilot, said that he would volunteer himself to fly F-16s for Ukraine, even if the U.S. eventually decides to send them or they pick them up from a different country. So this is an interesting development. I hadn't really thought of this possible avenue of outsourcing the flying to previously trained pilots, and like Business Insider said here on the article, it certainly would be faster to get folks that are already qualified in the aircraft, recurrent in the aircraft, than it would be to train pilots from scratch, even though they're probably coming from another fighter platform, MiG-21s or MiG-29s or something like that. But it'd probably be a faster process to get these individuals recurrent in the aircraft, recurrent in combat tactics, briefed up on the conflict itself and the operations, and then field them out to Ukraine.
I think this is something that they were always going to have to do with all this influx of jets coming in from other other NATO countries, and that they were always going to need to have not just pilots but have have people who knew what they're doing in regards to engineering, servicing, maintenance of these aircraft.
Yeah.
Because there's no point in sending 100 aircraft over to the Ukraine for 100 pilots to fly, but you haven't got anyone there who knows how to repair, and maintain these aircraft. So,
indeed, you've got to do a proper job, haven't you?
You have got to do a proper job, exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Armando, for sending all those in this week. And even when he's not here, he's still working. Bless him. He's busy beaver. He is. Now we have obviously. We're coming up to towards where we'd normally sort of finish a show, really. But we have got a special guest with us, and we do want to have a catch up with John to see what John's been up to. Because John, you are our resident cargo pilot of the community as such, who are regularly in the chat room. You are normally each week, but. So, just for the benefit of the listeners, John, you if I'm right, you fly the Dash 400, and is it a Dash 8 as well? You fly the 747?
Yeah, I fly both versions. The 400 is the most prolific version we have with our company, and we have the Dash 8s, including the last Dash 8 that came off the line. And the aircraft are mostly similar, a little bit of differences in terms of when you're sitting in the cockpit, basically just electronic checklist. I don't think you really notice, and it's just a lot quieter. But they fly the same. But
you're the outfit that you fly for, though, John. You're an old Boeing fleet. I think you've got 777s and 767s on the fleet as well.
Yeah, Acme Giant flies everything from 737, 767, 300s, 777, 200. Freighters, and then we have the 74 fleet. We are the largest 747 operator in the world now.
And which is it? Just the 74s that you fly for your outfit, or are you sort of signed off on the other ones?
The light twins? No, I stick with the 4-engine stuff. That's our joke inside. Yeah, light twins. So now when you're type rated in a aircraft here in the U.S., you generally almost always stay on that aircraft type. There's very few people that would ever bounce around. So I'm on the 7.4 for now. If I switch to the triple, I'd stay with the triple. That is one of the few stray planes in the U.S. that you could bounce between the 777 and the 787 because they have a common type rating. Similar to the way the 757, 767 had a similar type rating. But yeah, for me, going anything else be going backwards. I like having the hump that we control the whole space up there. And if you'd ask 12-year-old me what I wanted to do, it was fly 747. So I didn't have to grow up.
I can't believe you guys have got some 737-300s in the fleet.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're still operating those. I know we have the 800s that have been converted freighters. They're flying Prime Air, and that operation is going. I think that might increase. It should increase, but the large company that's running all that stuff is still sorting out their way with airline operations.
So, Nev, you got some questions for John?
Yeah, I just wondered, John, where did your aviation journey begin? And did you always aspire to be a pilot from a young age?
Yeah, my parents would say definitely the case. They blamed the BC the F4 demonstration from the Blue Angels down at Oceana when I was about 2. And I can tell you definitely from the time I was 5, that's all I ever thought about doing was being an airplane pilot. and that stuck with me. I think my mom was in denial for 18 years or so until they finally gave in and admitted that flying was definitely going to happen for me. And wasn't a lot of flying in my family. My uncle was a Air Force pilot, and there was always that the classic Air Force picture of him on the ladder of the T-38 that every Air Force pilot gets when they're going through training. And but he wasn't always around. He wasn't around very much in my life at all because he was constantly deployed either in Asia or in Germany. But it's just a love, a passion to me that I can't shake. It's definitely my fibers of who I am.
Yeah. How did you begin your sort of pilot training initially? How did that start for you?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it. I saved my parents a bunch of money on their taxes one year when I was between sessions at school. And because I had this big lump of money that I saved them, they said, hey, if you put your mind to it and you get everything set up, you show us a good plan, we'll give you, a few $1,000s to put forward. And I came home from my spring term, went right to work finding flight schools. And this is pre-internet days, so I was in the phone book and driving around making visits. Set up my flight training in my ground schools, set up my jobs I needed to keep, gas money to keep the car going. And I went to town and did it 2 months to the day and 41 hours of flying, which is a lot, to the point that my parents really were very surprised at, how I just turned into a machine. And that's something that's always sort of been the way I have been with aviation and my training, is that I will put everything into it because it's demanding, but it's rewarding. And I think that being accomplished at something that you love is something special.
Yeah. How did you end up going down the cargo route, and was that an intentional direction for you?
It came out of a month of flying with a colleague now here who told me about the Acme Giant and explained how that worked. And I was just getting ready to move over to Europe because of my being away from home so much. It's very difficult on the family and my wife, basically making her a single parent half the month. And it just seemed like a good fit, and flying 747 seemed good. But yeah, originally I was always thinking, I'll go work for United because I grew up around the Washington area. United was the big carrier there. I'd worked for United on the ramp, worked for United Express as a pilot. So I thought, well, that'll be the direction I'll end up going. But this worked out really well, and I just love the diversity of the flying that I have as an opportunity here. My last roster for this past month, or actually for March, in the first week, I went around the world, tropical places, such as Germany, but Djibouti, down in Africa, down to Hong Kong, right after that, up to Anchorage, down to the States, back up to Anchorage, all around the world. And when I first started here at Atlas, my first 6 months, I was on all 6 continents. And it's not an opportunity you get at most airlines.
Well, absolutely. I was going to ask you about those sectors and the circadian rhythm, and how that affects your way of sleeping. I mean, have you got a routine that you go into for this sort of thing?
Yeah, circadian is left at the door when you leave the house, and you just work on a what am I doing next routine. Sleeping when you're tired and eating when you're hungry kind of deal. I do try to work out a plan as best I can to be tired at the right times. I put a lot of focus on my room setup to have it cool and dark at the right time, turning on lights when I want to be awake and get my cycles right. And that's that's a job in itself almost. It's unpaid, and but I also learned the ability to sleep whenever. I go back when I take my break and I go sit in the seat, and I can turn off in 5 minutes or less, and sleep in the seat so soundly that when I am woken up, the back of my arms are numb from being off.
Is the seats that you have, obviously, because you obviously have your rest periods and stuff on board the aircraft, John? Obviously, on the commercial passenger airliners, that they tend to have those crew compartment areas with actual beds. I'm guessing you guys don't have that kind of luxury. You just have kind of a business class style seat on the aircraft.
Oh no, on 747 we have the beds. Our 777s have the beds. The 76s do not. The 73s don't fly long enough. I was working on a video from flying on the last 74. The computer was not playing nicely, so I couldn't get ready for this show, but I'll share it with you. And it's a big tour. We have essentially the old style business class seats in the front part of the cabin. The aft part of the bubble is 2 bunk beds. And guys will either go back into bunks and sleep or sleep in the chairs. Some people are chair sleepers. Some people are bunk sleepers. I tend to be a chair sleeper just because I don't like the gunk that builds up in the back. So
I was always led to believe, with what I've seen online and on TV, that you guys, cargo pilots, especially on the Queen of the Skies, on the 74 that you guys fly, I was always led to believe that you eat really well. You have fantastic meals on board the aircraft. Is this right?
Fantastic meals might be a stretch. A lot of food, yes, definitely. There's a lot of food. We have a joke that our bodies have to look like the image on the back of the tail of our aircraft, the big globe. So a lot of guys are not in the best of shape because we have trays of sandwiches, hot meals, depending on the length of the flights, and usually more food than we need up there, plus the coffee, plus the sodas. And on some airports, we really appreciate the food. We have a particular Han, Germany, Ramstein's, all catered by the same folks, and they take really good care of us, put some really good food on board, and those are good ones. Middle East usually has good food. Asia's are hit and miss. Some of them are and sandwiches in the U.S. are kind of, they're not great. But I've been heavily influenced by living in Europe, so my taste moved.
Yeah, absolutely. Just think about the 74, John. I mean, it's known for its incredibly high levels of redundancy with all the systems that you've got on the aircraft. Is that one of the attractions for you of flying long haul on a 4-engine aircraft, particularly a 74, with all of those levels of redundancy at your fingertips?
That's a bonus. To me, the 74 just represented the pinnacle of commercial aviation. And who didn't want to grab 4 throttles and shove those forward and make it go down the runway and take it someplace? And it's a great airplane because it does have that redundancy and does give you all the capabilities to continue to operate with individual systems failed, because 9 times out of 10 it does not affect us. We lose an engine, it is not a red emergency checklist. It's just a yellow sort of caution checklist, and does not cause us to divert. I think if the engine pops and we think parts might have come out of it, we're definitely going to land. We're probably not going to go start out across an ocean as a certain British carrier did once.
Yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah. But the airplane,
that Boeing had certified it to do so, therefore they were just following the manufacturer's instructions. I can't remember what the story was.
What is legal and technically feasible and what is intelligent to do are different stories. And I think in that particular case, what I recall of it was that they didn't And so they fully calculate out their additional fuel burn from the lower altitude, and then they sort of chickened out in that last part of the flight with their fuel numbers.
Yeah.
And, quite frankly, I tell people I'm a chicken. I don't like landing on fumes. I will do anything I can to keep gas on board. I am very conservative on my choices. I have a wife who does aviation safety, and I'm a bad liar, and she gets really mad when I do stupid things. So I don't do stupid things. And that's just how I roll. And now, being a safety representative and accident investigator, I feel that I have to set this higher example. So I don't take those chances, and I talk through things, and I make sure I get full input before we go making choices that you can't reverse.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the thing is, the most useless thing in the world, isn't it? It's fuel in the Bowser.
Yeah.
And runway behind you. Isn't that what they say? So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How easy is it to progress in the outfit you're with, John? Good to go from right seat to left seat.
In U.S. carriers, it's all about seniority. It's maybe a little different than some of the European carriers have a performance metric that they utilize, or certainly the Middle East carriers use a performance metric. But for us, it's seniority. I looked out. I came in the door. They said 5 years. I upgraded within a month of that 5-year mark, and it's been good. Some of our fleets for a while were very, very short upgrades, and you currently are seeing that now in some of the mainline fleets with Delta and I believe American both having 3 to 6 month upgrades, like 6 month upgrades onto a 7.6. So that's like you haven't even really got your footing in the airline and figured out things, and then now you're off the class to learn the left seat and be checked out to go run a 7.6 across the Atlantic. The Atlantic it's a busy place, and it's back to where it was before, and you have to know your procedures. You have to be comfortable in that operation, I think, to be a good leader there. But it's just the way things have gone. It's such a high demand that people have the option now to stay in the right seat and go for quality of life and still make more than adequate money versus taking the first upgrade.
Nev?
Well, we're sort of closing in to the end of the show, but of course, John, we've got to ask you that question, haven't we? The question that we ask all of our guests. I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you had the opportunity to fly any aircraft, either past, present, retired, GA, commercial, military, and you haven't had the opportunity to do that, what would that aircraft be?
I would love to get my hands on an A1E SPAD, which is probably not what you expect.
A what now?
Even I'm having to Google that one.
What's
A1
that?
is A1E, so this was a carrier-based
Oh, Skyraider.
Skyraider, and SPAD was the shorthand. But that A1E actually had like a compartment in the back, so you could put people in the back. So I could throw my family in the back, my wife next to me because she's a private pilot, and it's a tail wheel, huge radial. But it was a plane designed to go do close air support. It's just a bad-looking plane. Did an amazing job, and I loved that Sandy mission that they used to do. And I just think it looks cool. Everybody ticks his other stuff, but I just an airplane I've always really admired. And if I could ever get my hands on one, anybody out there that knows how to get me into one, I'd appreciate it. So.
Right, well, you never know. The old PTUK community is a funny old beast, so anything's possible.
Well, thanks, John, for coming on the show. It's been lovely to have you on tonight, and obviously the conversation has been rich with aviation greatness, which I knew it would be having you on board the show tonight. So thanks for joining us, John. Been really good.
Absolutely a pleasure.
And quickly, before we top or finish the show, don't forget to search for us on social media. All the usual links, you all know all the links. All the relevant links will be in the show notes for today's show. Just going to say a quick thanks to everyone who's joined us in the chat room tonight, all the YouTube family in there. Great to see everyone in there. And it's been a great show tonight. I've really enjoyed it tonight. So thanks to everyone. And also thanks to Nick as well, our latest addition to the team, for putting all the notes and stuff and bits and pieces together for us tonight for the show. So thanks to Nick
and John for finishing it all off as well.
Yes. John's been a very busy bee for the last few months, hasn't he?
Yeah,
all the flying,
indeed,
so
yes.
that's good.
Still very much the executive producer, though.
Yes, he is. Yes, he still has the
final say.
Four stripes on his shoulder,
and also the final say. He is the one that says yes or no. So
he says no a lot as well.
Oh, he does. Yeah, he's not afraid to, is he? Yeah, no. He's not afraid to keep you in check. That's the important thing.
That is correct. Yes, I know. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to John as well as
Gemma. Yeah, don't forget the wife's name. That's not the way forward. And on that bombshell,
that is it for episode 450. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. Take care.
You know what this means, don't you? You know what this means, isn't it?
What's that? Talk to me.
Only a year to the 500th.
Oh, shush. Have a great weekend, everyone, whatever you're up to. Stay safe and keep those eyes up in the skies at what's going on, because there's loads of good stuff up there. We'll see you next Friday on the show, hopefully with Armando back in the hot seat as well. So from me here in the home studios, from Matt in the PTK Master Suite studios, from Neville Bounds in his studio, and from our awesome guest, John, take care. We'll see you next Friday. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Alvin.